Hi, it's Tracy. Welcome to my home here in Sussex, England, where the Christmas decorating continues. This week we are in the kitchen, where I might have gone a little bit big.
Welcome to the kitchen and the remains of the autumnal decorating. Christmas hasn't quite arrived inside the house yet, but today is the day. Last episode, we were outside doing outdoor decorating on the front porch and on the veranda, and very much leaning into that natural, vintage, thrifted feel. So we're going to start off above the table. Now, last autumn, I popped 3 hooks into the ceiling, ready for the creations. And my first creation was the hula hoop chandelier. Now, hula hoop chandelier is for life. It can be decorated for all seasons, but I fancy doing something a little bit different. I thought about lampshades. I was about to rush off to the charity shops when I thought, oh, I've got one in the cottage. Now, one's not enough. I need another one. And I found another one in the house. Yes, it was in the hallway. Now, 2 wouldn't look right. We need the 3rd one. And lo and behold, I found one at the top of the stairs. These were all auction finds, and I stripped the fabric off and then used my wrapping technique. So using different types of coir, jute, wrapping them around just to create that different effect, that skeleton effect, which I really love. Personal taste. So I think that's going to be our running order on the table, but how to suspend them from the hooks because they've got no central fixing point. Now, I could just use some of the coir, the jute, and tie those onto the hooks, but I prefer to use chain purely for the fact that it is adjustable. It's very easy to move it up a bit, down a bit. But I was still left with the problem of how do I then attach it to the chain? Now, I know I wanted to put some battery-operated fairy lights on, so I wanted somewhere to hide the pack. And then I remembered I had these wooden lids from big candles that I'd had. And obviously I'd saved them because I'm not one for throwing things away. I also had some hooks left over. These are the same hooks that I used in the ceiling. And so a cunning plan started to form. Could I use the wooden lid with a hook right into the centre and then attach it to the chain? That could work. To increase my hanging opportunities, I added quite a few of these eye screws to the rounds. Now, in the interests of transparency, I've just got to say I didn't have a completely clear plan at this stage. I had a rough idea, a seed of an idea, but I'm just figuring it out on the hoof. And then I realised I've only got 2 of the big lids, so I was going to have to use a smaller lid. So for extra strength, I joined 2 of them together and added some more eye screws. The shades are just balanced on the rounds, so to stop them moving around, I pulled out my museum wax. Now, I always keep an old knife with my museum wax. I just find it much easier to get it out of the pot. I also changed the hook position on the chain. Then I thought, well, if you're sat at the table looking up, you're just going to see this wood. So took it all apart again and took the rounds outside and got out my favourite all-time favourite gold spray. And a little quick tip, if the lid is really quite tricky to get off, just give it a tap or 2 on the edge of your bench or your table and it'll flip off. Now, once the paint was dry, it was back into the house, reconstruct everything, put my museum wax back on, and time to dress. Now, I didn't want to put anything too heavy on. I've got these old Hobby Lobby garlands. You've seen me decorate with these so many times, and there's no weight to them, so they were ideal to pop up as a base. Now, continuing along the theme of reusing what I already have, These garlands came out. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you'll have seen me decorate at Christmas with these. I tend to use them in the hallway. I also use the old box of ivy that I have. So that was coming out as well. And little Bear, the apprentice furry supervisor, thought it was a great idea to jump on a chair and then sit on the table with me. Yeah, he's still a work in progress. Next to go on are the remote control battery operated copper fairy lights. I buy my batteries in bulk from Costco, but these Kirkland ones are now available on Amazon. Also, remember to write on your remote controls, because at Christmas time especially, you end up with so many remote controls all doing different things. And look, the shelf for the battery pack, it works. I love it when a plan comes together. Now, the senior furry supervisor, Bertie, he feels we could do more. So out come the floating LED candles. This is my first foray into floating candles. And I've got to say, I was quite impressed with the Harry Potter-esque wand that came with it, as my adult children are huge Harry Potter fans. I think there's going to be a lot of zapping going on at Christmas. And of course, more batteries. Yes, again, I buy these from Costco. They are available on Amazon, and I'll drop the links below. So I popped one up, thought, okay, we'll run with that. But the wire was so thin. So I got out one of the wool needles in order to thread that really thin wire through the little eye hooks. More. We need more. We need colour. Hydrangeas, dried hydrangeas. Now, I've been prepping for Christmas for a little while, and some time ago I rounded up some, this is just some of my collection of dried hydrangeas, and sprayed them. I used up an old spray from last year and a new spray that I'm using. It's a claret wine colour. I will link it below. And this is very much the colour that I am using this season. So that lovely wine, burgundy, dark reds, that is going to be running all the way through my decorating. Once those were dry, I popped them into containers and they were good to start decorating with. So expect to see lots of hydrangeas this year. Time for some dangly bits. Now, I want to show you my big flocked balls. I found these at Home Bargains and they worked out at less than £2 each. Absolutely perfect colour for what I'm doing. I was also going to take apart these charity shop finds and have those dangling down, but I thought actually that might be too much weight. So I pulled out a box of seriously old decorations, with the viewpoint of actually covering that round underneath. So when you look up, you see my big ball, and then you see lots of lovely little balls. Hides it all away. But those candles, I had to change them. The white, it just looked a bit white plastic. So the rub and buff came out, and I did it just with my gloves, no cloths or anything, and just wiped the rub and buff over whilst they were still hanging, because there was no way I was taking that wire down again. And it worked perfectly. Now we'll come back and see the full effect of the lampshade installation when I've done all the table. Yes, big tablescape coming up. But first of all, we're going to do a Christmas tree. Now, I like to use real Christmas trees, and my normal supplier let me down. So I headed off to B&Q as they had just had a delivery. The prices were far more reasonable than the local garden centre that I normally use. There wasn't a huge selection of height, but they were grown in the UK, and that was really quite important to me. So my lovely man Mark here began the process of opening up lots of trees, and B&Q, they were a bit scabby, my loves. They were a little bit bare. This was the best of the bunch, but coming home in the car, I thought it's going to be too small for the kitchen. So I had to come up with another plan. I had just ordered a faux tree from the White Company. Now, this was not cheap. It was £495. I got 15% discount, so £420. And I've got to say, again, White Company, I'm not really impressed. The lights were just not a nice colour. So in my desperation, I grabbed a roll, put them on, and then I realised that I'd put on the lights that I normally use on the outdoor, which are a little bit more green compared to the other artificial tree that I bought before and I used out on the veranda. This was only £180, again from B&Q. So I thought I'd get another one of these, only they've sold out. So I'm going to have to wait till next September, October time. So the lights came off this White Company tree, and this is the beauty of the faux trees, I guess. You can just take it apart and easily move it from room to room. And the real tree, when I come to decorate the snug, it will go in this position. Now, do you remember a shop and haul I did where I scored massive on baskets? Oh, I got such a dealio. This Fortnum & Mason basket actually is a perfect size for the base of this White Company tree. And this time I'm going to put the correct colour lights on. So much better. Now, time to get my big furry balls out again. I haven't bought new baubles in years, so I have trekked myself this year. And I'm going to wire them onto the tree with the covered wire that you will have seen me use again, time and time again. I use it in all different projects. And as for the rules on how to hang baubles and how to dress a tree, nah, I don't do rules. I just do it my way. I go with gut feel. The red eucalyptus was found at Home Sense at the end of last summer, £1.29 a stem, so I bought a few. I never get to decorate alone, although it's not really giving me his full attention. Tree topper. Now, I was thinking I could take this £2.49 one, spray it with the colour of the season, just as I did for the tree topper that I did out on the veranda in the last episode. But then I thought, how about using some hydrangeas right up there at the top and adding some of the chiffon ribbon that I'm using this year? This chiffon I will link below. And there we go. That's a different kind of tree topper for me. It's a new day, and before any decorating can begin, the furry supervisors need a good run. And they did get a good run, and then they thought about how they were going to come and help me. Yep, different rooms, different sofas. They look virtually the same. Back to the decorating, and we're going to do the white dresser now. And I've pulled out all my vintage books that are finished in a red or a green. I love styling with vintage books, and I am really leaning into it this Christmas. These are old pasta jars that I've wrapped in the coir bean string. So, of course, they're watertight, they're glass. So I'm going to be adding some clippings. Now, if you watched last episode, you'll know that I've raised the canopy of this beautiful oriental spruce. Absolutely glorious tree. Was looking a bit shabby at the bottom though, but it means I've got all these offcuts which I've got outside in the cold in water, so they are fabulous for the decorating in the house. The other ribbon I'm using this year is this velvet, which again is an Amazon find, and I will link it below. These are the candles that I'm using this Christmas. They're a beautiful red. They're called rustic velvet red. Again, Amazon, I will drop a link below. I like to keep on repeating materials. It really creates a cohesive look throughout your decorating. Now, these faux heads, they're really pants on the underneath, but the tops are lovely. I had 2 of those left over from the outdoor styling on the veranda. So I thought we'd add little pop of colour at the back. And of course, you can't have Christmas without fairy lights. And I really love the copper. I just think it's such a warm, gorgeous finish. Now, wires. Don't want to see these wires. Got this huge twig wreath. In fact, I've got 5 of them. HomeSense find. I'm just going to pop it at the back there to disguise. It's tablescape time. Time to dress the table. Oh, I love dressing a table. But the first thing I do before I start is pull all the chairs back out of the way. It just makes it so much easier to whiz around. Now, you see the furry supervisors are in position and Bear has bagged a prime spot. Let's begin. This is a fabric that I used at my daughter's wedding. I had so much of it. I quite often use it on the table. I thought this time round I would dye it a red, a tulip red, using the Dylon pods. I also found some old napkins at the back of the drawer. I thought, well, I'll chuck those in. And the weight wasn't too heavy, so I thought, how about some cushion covers as well? These had been previously dyed brown. And I thought, well, why not go red for Christmas and save some pennies? What could possibly go wrong? I've always had great success with these pods. That is pink. I mean, that is really in your face, bright pink. Might not pick up on camera. This is pale pink. Would be great for summer, spring tables. So I can definitely see me using those. And the cushions came out purple, but not quite the Christmassy purple that I was going for. So not everything I do works, and I think it's important to share that with you. So plan B, I went online on Amazon, $4.99 a metre. Unbelievable value. Went to my local fabric store and they were wanting anywhere between £20 to £60 a metre, which for me was way too high just to use on a table. Look how lovely and wide this is. You could use it as a full tablecloth, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to scrunch it all up. Bertie's got the hump because he wants to go out and sit on his sofa on the veranda, but it is a super cold day. And if I let him out, he's just going to want to come straight back in again. So he's sulking with me. This is crockery that I have had probably the best part of 30 years. You've never seen me style with it before because it's a red and I don't normally use red. This is a Marks and Spencer's Connaught range and it's fine bone china. And it was my first grown-up entertaining dinner service. So lots of happy memories on using this. And I thought the colour would be superb to use this Christmas. Normally, I would have done more on my centrepiece before I brought any crockery out, but I'm wanting to work that velvet around each place setting and just get the two to marry together. When I bring my cutlery to the table, I tend to use a tea towel just so I can give it a little bit of a polish as I place it out. And because all this is loose in a drawer, I use elastic bands to group things together. Now, I decided that actually there wasn't enough room with that size of side plate. So I've switched it around and brought out a smaller one. I'm not precious about putting out matching identical glassware. I like, well, shall we call it an eclectic collection? Basically all the odds and sods from different collections. I found 12 napkins for just £3 at my local charity shop. Wasn't certain if the colour would work, but I thought for £3, bring them home, put them through a nice hot wash, and there we go. Perfect. Now I'm happy with all of that, so we can move onto the centre. Just before we do, if you're enjoying this video, please do like, share, subscribe, hit that hype button if you're really enjoying it, and turn your notifications on. Please do leave a comment as well below. I love reading the comments. I read every single one, and I try my very best to answer every single one. Thank you so much. Now, onto the table, and I'm starting with piles of vintage books. As you know, I love my vintage books. I am leaning heavily into that this year, and why not have it as a centerpiece? Next up, I'm adding my beloved brass candlesticks in a random, haphazard, laid-back style, along with the Christmas candles. These are baubles that I've had for many years, and baubles are not just for the Christmas tree. Hydrangeas, well, it's very much a thing for me this Christmas. I love my rustic natural vibes, so pine cones and clippings come next. Crackers, I can't stand crackers, and the only way I can tolerate them is if they blend in with my decor. And when they're pulled, they make a mess of my beautifully laid out table. And if you think I'm going to put one of those daft paper hats on, think again. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me, or are you a cracker lover? Now, I bought some more fabric. It was such good value. And I thought, actually, this would be great to do lots of other things with. Now, Bear is obviously trying to help, supervising very much. And I'm wanting to make, not bows, because I don't really do bows, but ties, decorations for the chairs. And finally, I'm going to add a string of lights. It's a new day, and my, what a beautiful, cold, frosty one I have woken up to. This is the view from my dressing room. Now it's time to go back down into the kitchen to work on that dresser. In fact, we're going to go down into the field and take some clippings. I love to decorate with lelandai. We have lots of them on the property, some giant ones that have been here for decades, and some smaller ones that I've planted myself. Of course, the furry supervisors are with me, and we're going to grab a few clippings. We can always come back down and get some more if we run out. Now, on top of the dresser already is a hop garland. I popped that up there in August and I let it dry back naturally. And someone left me a comment once saying, well, that was a waste of money because you're never going to be able to decorate with that at Christmas time, as it will be completely the wrong colour. Well, we'll see, love. We'll see. Now, you'll have noticed the pillar candles up there. I bought those in the autumn decorating. Love them so much that I bought some more in order to use them all around the house and outside in the porches for Christmas. They're all real wax, remote control, battery operated. Love them. Back to decorating this garland then, or this hop garland that could never possibly look Christmassy. I'm going to pull over some of the red eucalyptus, again repeating that material, bringing the whole scheme together. As the hops have dried out, they do make a bit of a mess when you touch them. So I cleared all that up and now I'm ready to decorate the lower part of the dresser because there's a lot going on with that garland. I'm going to keep the downstairs, if you like, on the down low. Into an old trug, I'm adding my packing material, which I always save, and a jar in order to raise something up. And on top of that jar, I'm going to add an old candelabra that I changed the colour of with Rub and Buff. So did I pull it off? Did I make that hop garland look Christmassy? Let me know in the comments below. I also put 2 more up in the autumn, and now I'm going to do exactly the same with them. So let me just get on with that. Okay, it's the next day. Again, we have woken up to a really cold one and it's trying to snow. Here we go. Do they now look Christmassy? I've done exactly the same process, apart from I've put my big balls underneath it, love. I wanted to bring the big baubles over to this side of the kitchen because they do make quite a statement on the other side, on the tree and on the hanging above the table. Now, to attach them, I used a thicker thread, so it's still an acrylic thread, but it's easier to work with. The floating candles came with these hangers. I didn't use them, so I've used them on this side of the room to attach the baubles. Now, let's get on to decorating this corner. Another basket is coming out from my huge basket haul. Oh, that was so good. I'll link the video where I found them all down below. So if you fancy watching something not Christmas related, you can do. This is a cheese board, and I just absolutely love the decorative work on the handles. Lovely to bring out at Christmas time. Again, as the garlands above on this side of the room are making really quite a statement, I'm not going to get too over fussy with what's going on the countertops. Plus, I also want to leave space for food preparation. As we know, there is a lot of that going on at this time of year. And again, I'm going to lean very heavily into my vintage, thrifted, natural vibes. On the other side of the range, I'm going to use very similar objects and mirror what I've just done. I hope this is giving you inspiration to use not necessarily Christmas-specific objects, Christmas-specific home decor, that you can take what you already have and then just add a few little things such as ribbons, baubles, candles you already have, in order to bring out all that lovely Christmas scrumptiousness. But the one thing you absolutely have to have, and that is fairy lights. I've added a long string of copper cluster all the way along the countertops. On this mirror here, I'm going to do exactly what I did last year because it works so well, and that is add waterfall lights. I use these quite a lot at Christmas. In fact, you can see I've still got the museum wax on that piece because I use the museum wax to attach that behind the mirror at the very top. Oh, furry supervisors, they are watching closely what I am up to. I then very gently tease out each strand and use a little bit of the museum wax to keep them in position. So put lights in front of a mirror and you get double the twinkle. Now that's the countertops done. We've still got 2 islands to go. So let's move over to those and get them sorted. We're going to start off with the sink island, and I'm going to bring back out my brass scales just because I love them there. This was a charity shop find that I showed you earlier in the year, and I did a makeover on it. It came with 5 glass candle holders, but I'm not going to use the candles. I'm going to do it a little bit differently, just a few clippings, and these clippings I will probably switch out every week, put fresh in, so I'm not really going to bother filling them up with water. Just add a few pine cones. Candles. Now, I do like to buy my candles out of season. I found these last January when I was down in Cornwall, and it was a massive reduced section in Home Sense. Look at that, £1.30p. You can't go wrong. And on top of my pop-up socket lives my Welsh butter press. For the big wooden island, I have a big wreath. Now, big shout out to my lovely, lovely friend Karen at Tunbridge Wells Home Sense. She has such an eye for design, and every time something lovely pops in like this £24.99 wreath, she sends me a picture, and if I want whatever she's got, she'll just put it to one side for me and I'll whiz over there before it ever hits the shop floor. She is amazing. So please, everybody, say hi to Karen because she keeps me supplied. And I did pick up a few of these, so you will see them again. Now, this is a super simple way of creating a centerpiece. Just take one of your wreaths and lay it flat on a table and fill it with whatever you fancy. Now, a couple of these little baubles, the paint was coming off. So one tip I have is take a similar coloured nail varnish and just dab it on. Bish, bash, bosh, sorted. I picked up a few of these throws for just £20 from TK Maxx, and I thought this one would be lovely for my doggies because they love sitting in this chair. It's always good to share in life.